Hello there, friends, and welcome back to Artist Questions. This is the weekly live stream where every Wednesday we look at one of the biggest questions that are facing contemporary artists today. My name's Dan Curtis. I'm an artist and an educator from London in the UK. Today's question is, as an artist, how do I deal with rejection? It's a biggie, and it's one that I think requires us to get vulnerable. I'm going to try and get vulnerable a bit with you today. And yeah, it's when I talk about rejection specifically in this context, I mean things like, you're applying for prizes, you're trying to get your work in gallery spaces, you are, trying to get in front of curators, and it's just not seeming to happen, or you seem to be getting rebuffed, that the work isn't accepted, so on and so forth. And it came this how do I deal with rejection question, this subject matter for this one came to me from a really great artist and activist called Fran Willow, who messaged me and said, I'd love you to do an episode on this. And she described it as this sort of nuanced question where I know that the work that I'm making is good. Yeah, we don't always know that. That's sometimes a rare feeling, but I'm behind it. I'm excited with what I'm doing. I've been putting it out there, whether that's on social media or something like that, showing it to your peer group as we should be and getting feedback. And people are saying, this is great, the work's brilliant. But when I send it out to places, it's getting rejected. So what's going on? Am I missing something? Am I making a mistake with what I'm doing? Are my friends deluded? Am I deluded? All these kind of questions, right? This is where this is coming from. So that's the nuance we're going to focus on today. And as always, what I want to do is begin by looking at this from a psychological and emotional point of view, because I want us to have, again, that solid grounding for us to build the practicals on. So towards the end, we'll look at what, practical reasons why galleries might not be picking your work up or not accepting your submissions, why you might not have been winning open calls and prizes and things like that. We will look at some practicals. But first, I want to get into that emotional, psychological, so that you can have that solid basis to work from as a creator. So, how do I deal with rejection? The first thing that I want to say on this subject matter is that rejection as an artist is absolutely normal, 100% normal. And for loads of reasons, but primarily it's normal because there are loads and loads of artists, and there are a limit to the amount of prizes and galleries and spaces that that show work and buy work and fund work, etc. And therefore, it's normal to face rejection as an artist as we travel through our career and look for places where we are showing our work and connecting with people. And also that people are simply busy. You might not hear back from a gallery, and that's okay. It's worth remembering that behind every art prize, behind every gallery, behind every rejection, which is sometimes maybe a little bit of a harsh word, that there is a real person. Yeah, it's a human behind all of that. And it's not a faceless force, rejection, okay, that proves somehow that you are not making it, that you are not a good artist, that you have nothing going for you. Yeah. What we don't want to do when it comes to rejection is begin turning it back on ourselves, which is a propensity that artists have towards self-sabotage, when we become almost afraid of our own practices and the power that it has. As I say, there may be practical reasons that, your work has not been picked up, or that, galleries are not seeming interested in what you're doing. And we will get to those in a minute. But the most important thing is that you don't turn it on yourself, as the rejection is some sort of proof to your anxiety that there is something wrong with your work or with you as an artist, and maybe you should just give up. So it should feel normal, but why doesn't it feel normal, right? So for many, it doesn't. Alongside this is like a fear of rejection rather than like an acceptance of rejection. Why might it not feel normal, rejection? Well, I'm going to give you a few thoughts and you can let me know what you think. On the one hand, first one, rejection might not be feeling normal to you as an artist simply because you're not applying for enough stuff. Yeah. You're putting loads and loads of stock into maybe one or two applications in a year. And when they don't come, you're feeling devastated because you put everything into it. Let me explain it this way. I used to perform sketch comedy and stand up comedy for about 10 years, which was a great time. And I was in a sketch group, three of us all together. And we would, sometimes some months we'd be writing new material, rehearsing. And let's say one month we'd only have one gig in the month. That might be due to, the fact that, our diaries are full up or there wasn't enough slots at shows that month. And when in a month, when we had one gig between us, I always felt so much anxiety when I was up to the gig. Because there wasn't other gigs coming up, I was like, everything has to be perfect. We got to try and get this rehearsed. Everything has to go right. And if the audience are not into it, then it proves like the material is not good enough, etc., etc. Contrast that with a big festival in the UK called the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in Scotland every year throughout August. And we did that festival a number of times. And when you go and perform at the Edinburgh Fringe, the idea is that you go basically move to Scotland for a month and you perform every day throughout August. So ending up with 30 gigs in a row, right? And, a regular show, full show at the Fringe is an hour long. So you're doing 30 hours of performance in a row, plus other gigs that you might be doing alongside it each day and watching loads of stuff as well. The difference with having gig after gig after gig was that there was hardly the same amount of pressure on every show. It was like, oh, that didn't quite work tonight. I'm going to reshape that because tomorrow we can do this. And when you've got another show again, and then the next day and the next day and the next day, it enables you to play, to free up, to feel more excited about what you're doing. Yeah. So you can see the contrast between the one show in the month where it all felt like it rode on it being perfect and it got me so anxious and unable to experiment and play and enjoy it, versus 30 shows in a row, which meant that there was this freedom to explore what we were doing. And it's the same with rejections. I say the more rejections you can get, the better. It's like, I would say, you're getting on the rejection ladder. When you get your first rejection, it's a positive, okay, because it's showing I'm going in the right way, because it's normal to have rejections. So the more rejections I get, the more evidence I have that I'm doing things right. I'm pushing forward. My partner, Lizzie, who is a brand developer, website designer, her and her co-director have got this really interesting target this year, which I think is brilliant, which is they have a goal not to win projects necessarily. They are saying they've got a goal of 100 rejections this year. That's the idea. They have to have, by the end of the year, 100 rejections. And that's really clever because it spins it round into the positive and reminds us that if you've got 100 rejections, that means you went out there 100 times, right? And you kept putting yourself out there and you kept doing it. And of course, if you're doing that much and you keep placing yourself in positions where your work is visible and not putting everything into one gallery or one prize or one application or something like that, there is going to be a hit rate is going to come up. You've got more likelihood. And even if, out of 100 rejections or 100 applications, let's say, even 10 or 5% of them were successful, that would be considered really high. That's really positive. But you can't get to those sort of fractions without applying for a lot of stuff. Yeah. So the more rejections you get, the better in that sense. If we are able to spread and, apply for more things and put ourselves out there more, we'll feel much less emotional connection to that one big rejection and then, oh, forget it, then I'll just give up for the rest of the year. Yeah. I guess it's all about applying, building a habit of applying for things and getting yourself out there rather than having like a goal of winning something. So it's the habit of showing up and applying and continuing to do it rather than the goal of I have to get that one prize or that one gallery to show my work. What's helpful about that process when coming to rejection is that it stops you psychologically pedestaling things in your life. I'll give you another example. As an artist that I met years ago, I know you, I'm not going to name them, but I know you always want me to name and shame these artists when I talk gossip, but I'm not going to. Maybe you can DM me privately, but yeah, I met this artist a few years ago, and he was so full of resentment in his art practice, right? Made amazing work, these gorgeous, highly detailed miniature drawings and paintings. And he had applied to the Royal Academy Summer Show sort of 8 years in a row, right? It's one of the sort of biggest shows you can apply for in London. It happens every year, but they also show like hundreds of pieces at the same time, and it's all rammed together, and it's like a crazy show. I've never applied in it. It doesn't interest me, but a lot of people want to be part of it and say they've been part of it. And because he'd applied 8 times in a row every summer and never got accepted, he'd built so much resentment around the art world and about other artists. Like, these young artists, they don't know anything, they're just making trendy shit, and I'm making real art, and the establishment doesn't want my work, and it's like a cabal, they're all against me, that kind of thing. Yeah. So and because he was putting everything into this one place per year and not working on applying for anything else or getting his work amongst others, it had turned into this I'm angry at everyone and everything. And of course, that just saps all the energy from your creativity. So again, it's sort of like we were talking about a few weeks ago, our artists, competition or community, when you put all your eggs in one basket, it does become like this lack, this scarcity. I'm in competition with artists all the time. I've got to beat them. I've got to win. But it's not, we want to be in a place when seeing people winning opportunities is not a threat to us, that it's part of our community and the excitement, we're gassing each other up. If you haven't got that community and you're constantly focusing on one thing, it won't feel like that. It will feel like just endless scarcity and lack. Yeah. Another way of looking at it is that there might be artists, on the other hand, who have have got accepted to everything, have won loads of things in a row, like loads of prizes, loads of gallery shows. And if that's you, great, well done. If you've had a great year, fantastic. But it can be quite dangerous, that kind of thing as well. So we've got to be careful what we wish for. On The Healthy Artist, we're interviewing an artist in a few weeks' time called Damaris Thien, and she talks about having a really mad couple of years where she had won a number of prizes, got picked up by different galleries, got put in all these shows in different countries and things like that. And what should have been therefore seen as like this amazing successful time ended up, to her, actually being really stressful. And reflecting back on the work that she made in that time, she's not happy with all of it because it was rushed to meet certain deadlines and this hype of the moment that was being built around her practice. And that, so it can be a bit of a curse. Be careful of what you wish for in terms of, I need success in every level of what I do. I need to always win every prize, because you might not be able to keep up with it in the end. So it's important to be, looking at the right things for you. We'll come to that more in a minute. So that's one sort of idea about things not feeling normal, that you're not applying for enough things. Another reason why rejection might not feel normal to you as an artist when it should is that you might be putting actually too much stock into galleries, curators, art prizes, open calls to somehow validate you as an artist. Like if I got accepted into the Royal Academy Summer Show, or if this curator noticed my work, or if this gallery showed me, then my work would be valuable. Then it would be real. Then I'd be a real artist. Then people would look at me and I'd be proud of myself and all of that. Again, it's that habits versus goals things. That's purely goal oriented mindset. I can only be happy when I get to this gallery, and the whole rest of the time I'm just sad, not with trying to make this work and no one's interested, seemingly, that kind of thing. Whereas if it's about habits and community, you're always in a place of success because you're showing up. That's the most important thing, right? If you are really wanting to see your work out there, that's great. It's fantastic. And if you're not finding opportunities, then, make your own. Find ways of showing the work without the validation of galleries and curators and prizes, that kind of thing. Because often those things lead to that next step anyway. If you're showing yourself to be active and putting yourself out there, giving yourself a chance to show your work and, get excited by connecting with people, that shows professionality in what you're doing. And also you can get excited about it rather than sort of sitting in resentment about, oh, no one's giving me an opportunity or something like that. So don't put all your stock into galleries, curators, prizes, etc. to validate you as an artist, because in the end, the biggest thing about this is that the art world is just made up. The whole thing is made up. Galleries, winning big prizes, having a solo show, and that being some marker of an authentic or valid artist. It's made up. The whole thing's made up. It's not the essence of what you're doing. It's not the reason you spent hours and hours as a kid drawing or obsessed with, finding the perfect rock shape and making it into something. It's not the reason that you just keep coming back to making art and can't stop thinking about it because you want to be validated by a large gallery. But often that sort of nascent, vulnerable, childlike self, which the artist self is always a child and needs protecting like a child. Often the childlike self is very vulnerable to manipulation. Yeah. And so when you see the gallery offering you this great status to be real, it's all your dreams coming true, the child self might get sort of drawn into that and then sucked into this thing of, oh, why am I not getting success? Blah, blah, blah. And the whole reason of what was the point of making work in the first place just seems to be lost. Yeah. Because when you think about it, Van Gogh, to use a really famous example, Van Gogh didn't apply for any art prizes. Was his career a waste of time then? Do you know what I mean? Like, and until an artist is famous, does that mean the whole rest of their time when they, were working job to job and making things happen and doing cool shows with their friends and having fun, was all that a waste of time? Of course it wasn't. That doesn't make any sense, does it? If you think about Morandi, one of the greatest, Italian painters of all history, who just had a job as a school teacher teaching art in the daytime, and then in the evening he'd go up to his flat and paint the same like 5 or 6 bowls, pots, bottles that he had on his table. Did that for like 40 years, and it's some of the greatest work you've ever seen. He wasn't traveling the world doing exhibitions and applying for things and all these accolades, and yet we reflect on his work and like it was a fucking incredible art career because it's what he wanted to do. So I just want to remind you that, again, putting everything and this stock into the validation through galleries, we have to be careful of we need to come back to our essential self. And if we are wanting to get out there and be in the art world and make work that will be in maybe art fairs or bigger galleries, it's got to come from the position of because that's what we want to do, not because that's what makes an artist real or that's what I should do, because the whole thing is made up. Yeah, it's about you finding your area and where you want to be. And it's worth reminding again that in the end, you are not owed anything by anyone, and you're not entitled to anything as an artist. No one deserves to give you space or time or whatever. And that's good. That's brilliant because it means you're in control of your own career. That's the best thing about being an artist in sort of this, capitalist structural state, is that it's always with you. However you do it, it will always be yours. Yeah. So that's my psychological framework. So just a little recap if you're joining a bit late as well. Rejection is normal for artists, and it should be seen as normal because there are limited opportunities sometimes, and there are loads of artists and people are busy and not everyone gets everything. Yeah. The main thing is not to turn it back on yourself into some sort of thing that you can weaponize against yourself to tell yourself that you're not good enough. Why might it not feel normal? It might not feel normal because you're simply not applying for enough things and you're not building up the level of rejections that you need. Honestly, when I apply for lots of stuff and make sure I'm turning up to shows and going out there and chatting with people, it's so great having all these connections, because when something doesn't come off, I'm like, oh, okay, I can move on because I was going to focus on that thing next anyway. And then I can focus on that. And it goes on. And then I'm not in that emotional position of, I got rejection. Now there's nothing. And that was supposed to prove it all to me. And not putting that big stock in others to validate you as an artist. Your work is good no matter where it ends up or how it's seen. Yeah, your work is valid. So with saying all that, let's look at some practicals about why specifically, if you've applied to lots of galleries, let's say you've sent submissions, you're trying to make connections and it's just not hitting, why might that be the case? Okay, practicals. The first one, you may have faced a rejection from a gallery or from an art prize because you didn't show your work in its best light. Okay. Now, I used to run a gallery in London for a few years, and I've worked for lots of galleries as well. And I cannot tell you the amount of times I have seen the worst level of professionality, lowest level of professionality when it comes to artists putting themselves out there. We're talking like shitty photos taken on phones with the artist's finger in the shot, blurred photographs, things that aren't lit properly, so you can't even tell what it is. No sizes, no understanding of what you're actually looking at. I worked at one gallery where we just got a letter in the post with no like return address or anything, opened it up, and there was just a CD in there. No letter, no like, hi, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing. And the CD just had artwork on it. And it was like, we don't even know who this is from. And it's like, this can be such a problem for artists when they haven't taken that time to show their work in the best light. Yeah. It's really worth investing in that time to photograph properly and make your work look the best it can be, because what that does is not make the presentation look incredible, it makes the presentation look invisible, right? And it focuses entirely on the work. If you get a shitty application, it shows that the artist doesn't really respect or care or understand how their work is seen, and very much less likely then to be picked up by a gallery or an art prize, right? If the basic level, even the basic level, honestly, of professionality will be miles ahead of so many other applications that people are getting. And I would say, collaborate with a designer, find someone who can help you use a program that makes the application the best it can be. Yeah. So you get your work seen in its best light so it can be respected. Respect what you do, elevate it. Don't leave it as the last thing. Another reason why you might have been rejected is because the place that you sent your work, the gallery, let's say, wasn't the right place for your work. You didn't research properly. Again, as a previous gallery owner, I received so many emails and applications and things from artists who had clearly not read anything about what we were doing, who had clearly not ever been to the gallery, who had clearly not looked at the shows that we were doing previously, because their work was completely the wrong format, the wrong type, not what we were interested in showing. For example, if there's a photography gallery, you're not going to send applications of your ceramic pieces to them, but artists do. They do that. They scatter fire a million things out, hoping that it will lead to something. And when I talk about building up your 100 rejections in a year, I'm not talking 100 rejections of a copy and paste email that you scatter fire to as many addresses as you can find when you type in gallery in my area or world class contemporary gallery, and don't do any research about it and just say, hi, insert name here, whatever. It needs to be research, it needs to be professional, it needs to be you building up the time to make the connection with the gallery, because the gallery will see that professionality as in, oh yeah, you've done your research, you know what we're about, and you know the interests of the space, and in the best possible way you can get to those galleries. If you're a person that's able to get out and get to shows and meet people, then do that, because that is an application in itself. Being there and chatting with the owner or the artist, or retweeting or resharing their work on social media, etc., writing about it in a newsletter, doing whatever you can to make connections with those people is brilliant, and it will not go unnoticed. Yeah. And it's not because you make connections with artists and galleries because they're going to give you something, but because you literally like the gallery, you're interested in the work. If you view everything in this transactional way, that everyone should give you something back, that you're trying to get connected to places so that you can get a show there, etc., it's so obvious to people. But also, again, it builds up that psychological mindset for you that you're deserved something, and that everything out there, when you don't get it, everyone is against me or something like that. Instead, just build genuine friendships and community, and look at what really works for you. So for my partner, as I was saying, in her branding business and web development business, they decided, okay, if we're going to go for 100 rejections this year, we need to look at where's the best use of our time. They were looking at things like, should we be on social media more and things like that. They were thinking, no, that's not going to get us our rejections. That's going nowhere. So instead, they've actively been putting themselves and going into networking brunches to try and get as many rejections as they can, and keep building it up. Another reason why you might have been rejected, or, well, this is connected to this, is I really want you, and this is going out to, younger artists and artists who've maybe just graduated from art school, or artists who are coming into the sort of art world for the first time and learning the ropes and seeing things for themselves. I want you to think about, to be really careful of scams. There are so many galleries out there that are not really galleries. They're kind of just scam businesses, that make money out of vulnerable artists. I got so many of these kind of emails when I graduated from art school. And it's so dangerous because, you're riding on the high of finishing your final show at art school. You are therefore in quite a vulnerable place emotionally. And that's what makes it so dark, is that then these sort of these businesses, really, I don't want to call them galleries, like target young artists at this time. And I would get emails that would say things like, we saw your work at, your final show, or blah, blah, blah. We saw this piece. We think it's amazing. And we think this or another couple of your pieces would be great in an exhibition in Paris that we're putting on in about 3 months' time. Let me know if you'd be interested. I can send you more details. Oh my God, I've only just graduated and people are already wanting to pick me up. This is amazing. And we get sort of lured in. Again, the child self gets lured in. You're like vulnerable in that moment. And then, okay, if you do this, what you got to do is there's a £200 entrance fee. And then each artist is going to have a certain amount of space. And depending on the space, it's going to be £1,000 or £2,000. And the problem is artists will end up paying it. And then they're like, but, it sounds expensive, but honestly, we get people from across the art world coming. Look, this artist has sold this, that, and it's all just a scam. Yeah. And you get there and hardly anyone turns up. You don't make any sales. Or if you do, there's a massive, false weighting in terms of what percentage you get in the end. And it's, of course, young artists don't have spare £2,000, in the back of their pocket, to make this happen. And you've got to be so careful when it comes to these things. So I would say having that sense of understanding of yourself and doing good research around where you want to show and where your work as an artist is going to be best received will help you to avoid these sort of scam gallery networks as well. It doesn't matter if the gallery seems to have 100,000 followers on Instagram. They might have paid for that, or they might have followed 100,000 artists to get it all back, because artists are desperate for this exposure and for validation, and they take advantage of that. Another reason why you might have been rejected from, an application or a gallery or something is because your work wasn't good enough yet. And sometimes we do have to come to that conclusion as artists. There are times when we're sending stuff out too early, where things aren't resolved yet, where we haven't come to that point where it should be out of the studio or off the computer or wherever else yet. And the best remedy against that, again, is regularly showing your work to your peers, mentors, finding artists that you are interested in, connecting with them and showing your work, doing studio visits or wherever it is you work. Get people to see photographs of your work, bring them to where you're making stuff and show them what you're doing, and get that critical, solid feedback. That is guaranteed to help any application that you do be 1,000% better, because we get stuck in our own heads as artists. We find it difficult to be honest with, the way that we're looking at things and the way that our work is growing or not growing, and the way we're presenting it in an application or something like that. So if you keep that community around you that you can be accountable to in, applying for things, but also they can help you to make your work better, then eventually the galleries will start coming to you, because you're putting yourself out there and making the best you can with your work. Again, I've talked about it the last few episodes, I think, and it's so important. But in this book, Art and Fear, as we discussed on a few episodes, this manual for not giving up, which is primarily step one, is to seeing your peers and showing your works in progress regularly to them. That's so important, and finding that community. And then step two is seeing that as the primary destination for your artwork. And then all being well, the prizes and the galleries and everything will come, because you're doing stuff together. You're making it happen. I was seeing a great conversation with an actor the other day, and he was saying that, when he was getting rejections and not getting picked up for anything, he just started making his own shows, and with his friends, just making their own films and doing their own stage shows and inviting people to them and doing them in their house or hiring somewhere together. And because he said the main thing I wanted to do was, in the times when I wasn't being exhibited or wasn't getting on stage, is to get better at my craft. Yeah. Because if I'm constantly waiting for, an acceptance from, a validator like a gallery or, a theater or something like that, all I'm doing, he said, is getting better at waiting for the phone to ring, which I thought was a really helpful way of putting it, where I could actually just be getting better at my craft in the meantime. And this is the problem with putting everything into, I must be in that one gallery, I must work with that one place, I must win that one prize, and putting everything into that. And then when you don't get it, you feel so distraught, because you've spent the whole year wanting to be validated by them, rather than the whole year building up your practice, and getting stronger. In conclusion, then, keep connecting with your peers, and please, when you get out there, remember that rejection is absolutely normal for artists, and aim for getting lots of rejections, because that means that you are doing the right thing, you're going in the right path. And by putting yourself out there as much as you can, the times when things don't go any further will not feel as painful for you. And you'll be able to ride and say, on to the next one, on to the next one.